morning, everybody. Welcome to the Community Forum for the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. So glad to see you all. And today we're going to do a brief overview of the biochemistry of how low blood sugar sets us up for relapse, because there's some very, very specific things that happen in the brain when our blood sugar drops. And so I'm going to review those, and then I think we have some cases. Let's do very quick introductions. Jeff.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jeff. I'm in Colorado. I can stop there.
And he's an addiction counselor who primarily works with families, and he especially works with the idea of alcohol biotypes, which can be a very interesting and useful way to intervene in somebody's alcohol use disorder. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Christina.
Elena.
Hi, Elena here, formerly for 40-something years of Oakland, but now in Elk Grove in Sacramento County. Nutrition educator since 2007, just took Christina's course, the level 1, and that's about it.
All right, welcome. And Michael.
I'm Mike Wells. I'm in West Virginia. I'm a recovery coach and a peer recovery sports specialist. I'm currently in Christina's level 1. So, and we're on our 3rd week. So,
Yay.
Right.
Glad to have you with us, Michael. Okay. Let me share my screen. So, how the impact of lower blood sugar on the prefrontal cortex affects potential for recurrent use in the recovering person, because this has significant implications for treatment and meal planning. So where we want to start here is just, let me see if I can get the whole slideshow up. Is just really focusing in on the role of the prefrontal cortex in recovery and therefore in relapse. So what is it? So the prefrontal cortex lives basically behind our forehead. Let me see if I have a picture of it. I don't. Too bad. Okay. Anyway, it lives behind our forehead. And what it does is it is where our executive functioning lives. So we'll be looking at this a little more in a minute, but executive functioning is the ability to think, plan, prioritize, make decisions, think through situations, access skills, all of the qualities that we need both to succeed in life, in school, in a job, but also in recovery. And people who have impaired PFC function struggle in life, school, jobs, and recovery. So there's been a lot of research that has demonstrated that a poor functioning prefrontal cortex correlates with increased addictive behavior and recurring use. Because if you don't have access to those skills, it's really going to interfere in your ability to make it to meetings, make it to treatment appointments, get up in the morning, plan your life, do recovery skills. And if you ask sort of the conventional substance use disorder researcher why we have an impaired prefrontal cortex in early and maybe not so early recovery, they're going to say, well, a good 60% of people with substance use disorder have comorbid running alongside attention deficit disorder, otherwise known as ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, with or without hyperactivity. Because ADHD significantly impairs prefrontal cortex functioning. In fact, if you look at SPECT scans of this, you see these great big gaping holes where the prefrontal cortex is supposed to be. Now, these aren't physical holes, these are functioning holes, but they're still holes, and people cannot access the skills that are supposed to be there in those holes. Okay, so that is certainly a piece of it. They've also talked about progressive damage to the prefrontal cortex due to ongoing substance use. Okay, and there does certainly appear to be damage here done to, if you're using substances over time. And we know that there are specific neurological conditions such as, Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome and others due to long-time ingestion of alcohol that can impair not just the prefrontal cortex, but the whole thing. A lot of toxicity from these substances and heavy metals from these substances will certainly impair our cognitive functioning, and all of that matters. But we want to suggest that there is another immediate daily impact on prefrontal cortex functioning. So we can either support our PFC by what we eat, or we can impair our PFC by what we eat. And that's what we're going to be looking at right now, is how low or dropping blood sugar actually impairs the prefrontal cortex. So we argue that missing a meal or 2 or 3, or eating a very high carbohydrate meal or snack low in protein, or just simply going too long without food, puts people directly into a high-risk situation for recurrent use. And there are several interconnected reasons for this. So we know that this research has been done, that a well-functioning PFC is crucial to sobriety. We need it. And it's also crucial to life, right? And the purpose of sobriety is to be able to function well in life. But the very first point is, in order to stay clean and sober, we need to have the ability to say no. We need to want to say no. And the term we use for that is willpower. Now, I know a lot of 12-step programs, they're saying, well, it's not about willpower, it's not about control. Well, on one level, that's true. On another level, we have to want to say no, and we have to be able to say no, okay? So the term for that is willpower. Well, research on willpower has shown that the prefrontal, that it lives here, first of all, in the PFC, and secondly, that the PFC requires sufficient glucose to function. Now, yes, you can switch over to, ketones and that sort of thing if you're on a high-fat diet, but generally it relies upon blood glucose levels. And what they found is that low blood sugar reflects in lower glucose supply to the PFC. That immediately translates into a harder time saying no, whether it to be alcohol, donuts, tobacco, etc. So the moment blood sugar drops, either as a result of a reaction to a high sugar meal or just because you've gone too long without food, we lose willpower. Secondly, low or dropping blood sugar results in a surge of adrenaline and other stress hormones. These chemicals impair effective signaling in the PFC, which means that executive functioning is impaired. So this leads to a lack of use of relapse prevention skills in response to a relapse trigger. And then a hypoglycemia-induced stress response may stimulate a conditioned response, Pavlov and his little doggies, towards use of addictive substances and behaviors. So let's look at all of this a little more closely. Okay, we've talked about the decrease of willpower. Now, how this applies to alcohol use disorder is now it's looking like up to 95% of people with alcohol use disorder, but also other addictive substances, demonstrate reactive hypoglycemia on a 5-hour glucose tolerance test. This has been studied all the way back into 1966. Okay. And what this means is that within 2 hours of eating sugar, blood sugar drops to a dangerously low level in the body. Well, that's immediately going to impact willpower right there. And if almost 100% of people with substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder, have reactive hypoglycemia, which means that, you know, they really can't tolerate sugar at all, this is a very real, very consistent issue. So this was there is a treatment program in northern Colorado called Inner Balance, and they do a 4-hour glucose tolerance test on all of their clients. And a couple of years ago, I had them pull 20 people who did not have an issue with alcohol, but had an issue with other substances to see how they scored on the hypoglycemia test. 100% of them met the medically diagnosed criteria for reactive hypoglycemia. This is sort of the picture of what happens. This green line is when people with reactive hypoglycemia have sugar, blood sugar goes up very quickly, stays there for like half an hour, then drops down to this very low point. So this is where, when it gets down to 50, we have impairment of willpower. This is right here where we lose our willpower. But then what happens next? What happens next is that the body, the adrenals secrete adrenaline because this is dangerously low, and the body has some emergency actions in place, and these actions are to secrete adrenaline because adrenaline releases stored sugar back into the bloodstream, which is a great thing, wonderful thing. So you see here how this, green line goes back up. That person didn't eat anything else. They weren't fed anything. This is what happened inside their own body to save their lives. Great. What else does adrenaline do? Okay. What adrenaline does is it activates the reptilian brain, the amygdala and the brainstem, where we are reactive, we are looking for danger, we're in survival mode. And please remember that once somebody has developed an addictive disorder, the brain has decided that they need that substance for survival. So if they think their survival is being threatened, there's this conditioned response in the brain to reach for that substance. So adrenaline makes us more, so it deactivates the prefrontal cortex through a change in the signaling pathways. Just think about it as the PFC goes on vacation, okay? Or gets kicked off the bus, whichever image works best for you. But what that means is that the amygdala, the reactivity, is driving the bus. We're not. So adrenaline makes us more reactive and impulsive. It interferes with long-range planning. And we have less access to executive functioning while affected by adrenaline. Well, executive functioning is where we place our recovery skills, right? The calling your sponsor, the pausing, the breathing, the eating, the taking a hot shower, the right, everything you do when a craving hits or when you're stressed rather than using. Well, we lose access to those. And I'm sure you've all had the experience either in your own life or with a client where they've had either a strong craving or a slip, or they find themselves, you know, in the liquor store with no memory of how they got there. And you ask, well, you know, how did you get here? And why didn't you use any of your recovery skills? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know. It just didn't occur to me. I forgot. Well, yes, because if you don't have access to where this is stored, you don't have access to it. So that sets us up then for relapse. And the very final thing is this conditioned response. So they've done a lot of research on this. And when somebody has an active substance use disorder or process addiction, or is in still relatively early recovery from it, the brain is sensitized to cues. And when the person is exposed to these sensory or experiential cues, the part of the brain that says, I want my substance, that part of the brain lights up in MRIs and PET scans. So we can see it in real time. You know, you scan somebody in early recovery and expose them to their cues, the craving part of their brain will light up and they will experience a craving. Well, stress does that to us. Stress lights up the part of the brain that says, I need to use, I want to use now. Good stress, bad stress, any sort of dysregulation in early recovery or when somebody's actively using, it's going to light up the craving part of the brain. Well, that's scary. That's scary because if the adrenaline is coming from eating a high sugar meal or missing a couple meals, it has the same impact on your craving as, you know, having a fight with your spouse or, you know, your boss coming down on you or. Yeah, Jeff? Unmute.
Thank you. Is it okay if I jump in with a question right now?
Yes.
So I have this thought, and I just want to run it by you to see if it's accurate or not. But I really appreciate the kind of process you're going through to describe a person's lack of ability to use their best thinking when they have this blood sugar thing going on. I'm also wondering, and you've just started to get into it when you talk about stress, but I'm thinking So family members who are living with an individual in addiction who hasn't
Mhm.
got out of that cycle yet, do they have a similar kind of thing happening in their own brain where they may know some skills on like not enabling or whatever, but they forget?
Yes, because whenever we're stressed, under the influence, so the experience of stress, right? When we say, I'm stressed, is actually due to increased stress hormones in our blood. Those stress hormones include adrenaline, cortisol, and norepinephrine, but very specifically adrenaline. So yes, if you have a family member and their addicted person comes in and creates chaos, their stress hormones are going to go through the ceiling and they're going to stop thinking. This is why people become reactive, why family members become reactive. I mean, this is a great question, Jeff. This is why family members become reactive and forget to use their recovery skills.
Right.
And they yell and scream and jump up and down and, are not being particularly useful. And this, of course, is where theanine comes in as an amino acid, because theanine calms down your sympathetic arousal. But family members also tend to forget to eat. They're too stressed to eat. They're too overwhelmed to eat. They're too guilty to eat. Let me take care of everybody else, but I'm not allowed to take care of myself. That includes stopping and eating peacefully. So this whole situation I'm describing here does not just apply to people in active addiction or recovery from active addiction. This absolutely is also applying to family members and the rest of us. Yeah.
Thank you for connecting those dots concisely.
Yeah. So what we're positing here is that the sympathetic arousal stimulated by dropping blood sugar causes dysregulation that triggers the conditioned response, right? That lighting up of that part of your brain leading to cravings. Now, again, if we look at family members, Jeff, family members also have addictive behaviors, right? Sometimes they also have alcohol use disorder or THC use disorder, or what are some of the other kind of hidden addictions that can afflict family members? Well,
Like abuse disorder, where someone does not abuse substances, but has conditioned abusive behavior.
yeah, can get violent, can get verbally violent. Yeah.
And also, like, back to what Jeff was saying, Merlene and David Miller, what was that book where like somebody can manage to stay clean and sober for years, even decades, but they're kind of miserable,
Mm-hmm.
but they're sober,
Mm-hmm.
but they're really not happy, but they're sober.
Right. Well, that's
So
due,
deep,
that's
like that's
the
so
blood
deep.
sugar issue, but that's also the depleted neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But let's think about romance novel addiction, shopping addiction, shoplifting, binge watching some TV show, binge reading whatever you want to binge read, internet surfing, gaming, right? Gambling. There's a lot of process addictions as well as substance addictions like sugar that family members will reach for when they're stressed because of this process right here. Yeah, Jeff? Unmute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I really appreciate this because what I'm seeing here from family members, there's some basic stuff they do, the helping that can go over to enabling, but also like avoiding or blaming or distracting or, all of those behaviors can be a way for them to try to manage not only the situation, but manage what's happening inside of them too.
Yes.
Which
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and the question that I have here is, and I'm trying to again ask you like how to connect dots between what you're describing with the blood sugar and the lack of the prefrontal cortex working, so the person can't remember their recovery skills, whether recovery is from alcohol or recovery is from, codependency or family enabling or whatever. But so the question is, when this is going on with the blood sugar, I'm wondering how this impacts the nervous system. I think I know, but I would
Well,
like your
when
kind
you
of
say
more.
nervous system, Jeff, what do you mean? Because I'm directly tying this into the nervous system by saying it creates sympathetic arousal.
Okay,
That's the
okay,
sympathetic nervous system, which is
right,
driven by adrenaline, cortisol, and norepinephrine.
right. So then calming skills are going to be harder to access. All
Right.
calming
You're not going to
skills.
remember them.
Yeah.
You're not going to remember them.
So, and I mean, what I'm noticing is that people can, practice, kind of, build in self-care type things into their daily thing. They can do their best and they have failure after failure and shame builds up and they don't understand this kind of internal dynamic that you're
That I'm describing.
describing here. And what I've been like, my thinking about like all the amino acid coaching stuff that I can do for individuals who are in early recovery or are going back and forth, it's like this same amino acid coaching is very appropriate for family members, but the unfortunate part is they don't see they have a problem. So I don't know. I'm kind of
Well,
thinking
they
out
do
loud.
sometimes, because if you get them, so part of codependency, coaching and treatment is well, all recovery is mindfulness, right? Is developing the ability to notice what is happening inside of you. And so if you ask somebody, well, in the middle of you jumping up and down and screaming because you're whoever did whatever, and I know you feel totally justified because what they did was just horrific. How did that feel inside your body? How do you feel like if you were to watch a movie, watching that interaction? How do you feel about the skills you used in that situation? Right? And so these are ways to start getting people to reflect back on, oh yeah, maybe I could have done this, and this. Maybe that embarrasses me. Maybe, right? So that's one way to do it. But this is where we just say, people don't like getting upset, Jeff. We don't like getting upset. We don't like losing control. We may justify it all the time. We still don't like it. And so if we say, if we get people into the habit of eating, if we get people into the habit of noticing when they're moving into arousal, this is why I give, so many of my clients the little exercise throughout the day. Every time you go to the bathroom or sit down to eat, do this exercise. Take a deep breath. Notice what you're feeling inside, physically and emotionally. 30-second body scan. And ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And from what am I feeling, what am I wanting and needing? And how can I make that happen?
Yeah.
Well, just that exercise repeated a couple of times a day, and you don't have to do it perfectly, it actually settles down your nervous system and creates what's called the relaxation response. So there's a book out there called The Relaxation Response. And what it is, by doing a variation of this exercise a couple of times a day, you are training your nervous system to notice when it's getting dysregulated and to bring itself back into calm and peace. Okay. So it's a very useful exercise over time. It seems so simple, but when somebody does it every day over a couple of years, things change. Things absolutely change. Okay. Let me finish this. Now, there's other biochemistry here, but, we know that the plan is to eat the, protein along with other real food every 3 to 4 hours. But you can also teach somebody, when they start noticing that they're getting dysregulated, to take a theanine, to take a glutamine, or to go eat, to take a break. This is the timeout skill, but you need to catch it soon enough while people still have choice. Because once they're in full sympathetic arousal, you don't have any choice anymore. You're just in full-blown reactive mode, and it just carries you along with it like a tsunami. So you need to catch it soon enough, and that's the skills we teach our clients. Is the moment you begin to feel dysregulated is when you take care of yourself. If you know that your husband comes in at 2 o'clock in the morning every night, drunk and raging, what are you going to do at 1:30? Well, you might lock you and your kids into the bathroom, or you could eat, you could take theanine, you could take glutamine, you could prepare yourself so that you have rehearsed your skills and you know exactly what you're going to do, rather than cowering and shaking, behind your sofa. Because by that point, you're not thinking and you're not planning and you're not using your skills. Right? So part of your preparation, part of your safety plan is going to be to either have food or these particular amino acids available that you can pop really quickly so that you can stay thinking in the middle of the crisis. Because if you have to grab your go kit and your kids and leave through the back door because it's about to get violent, you don't want to be running on stress hormones. You want to be thinking. You want to be calm, cool, and collected. Well, you need a functioning brain to be calm, cool, and collected, to be able to follow through on your safety plan. Does that answer some of those questions? Yeah. we don't talk much about families in my training. We do in the family lecture, but these are things we need to be thinking about and talking about. Because things can get really bad for some family members. Okay. Welcome, Kathy. Hi. So Jeff, shall we hear your case?
I don't really have questions about the case at all. My question was more about, me just kind of hearing different language other than my own to describe something, to make it, I'm just looking to hone my language
Right.
to make it as precise as possible to connect dots, and
Sure.
so this is helpful.
Great. Great. Michael, Kathy, do you have any questions or comments or ways that you can see applying this information?
I have one question about I've seen a lot of pictures of addiction and, even gambling addiction things and what it does to the brain. And I see these, and I always took them as holes, but you say they're not really holes, they're functioning holes, correct?
Yeah, they're not physical holes. We don't have space in the brain. It's where the brain is not actually working. It's not
Oh,
it's not using oxygen and glucose to do its job.
so that's actually bringing a lot of things together for me when I think about that. As trivial as that sounds, it brings a lot, and what you teach, it brings a lot together. So thank you.
I'm delighted. You're welcome.
So Christina,
Mhm.
okay, there's this interesting thing I have been aware of where when the person it is from whatever the problem is or whatever's going on, if their behavior is like being reactive from that blood sugar thing, the funny thing is that is the last thing you want to say to them. I've tried it, is, have you eaten? They get so pissed off. I can't even, right? Don't you tell me what to eat? I can't even. It's not about that. It's just hilarious. It's like that's the last thing you can say to them, right?
Right,
And the
right.
other thing is, I think a lot of times that kind of constant, whether it's a family member or the person with the substance, either one, is the person, like the stress thing where they're always stuffing it down. And so then when they finally bust out, they kind of feel alive.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They feel alive because they've been deadening. They've been just having to deaden things all the time. Then it comes out and it's like, okay, I'm alive.
Right. And it can be a huge relief.
And then there's the funny thing is, like, there's nothing more enticing than self-righteous anger. I mean, let's face it. Okay.
Right.
So, but yeah, that thing, you can't tell them they need that. Ask them what if they've eaten in the thick of it. I have found.
That's why you really want to start catching people sooner, training people to catch it sooner.
Yeah.
Because, once you're in the middle, once somebody's in the middle of a binge, right, you're not going to stop the binge.
Right. Or even if it's the emotional binge.
Right, exactly. No matter what type of binge it is, whether it's a rageful outburst or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're at that point, you just have to protect yourself and, do.
And ultimately, I know it doesn't feel good to the person ultimately, like certainly like afterwards, but
In the moment
Good.
it does.
I love this. Yeah, this is so good. Yeah.
Yep. In the moment it feels great. We have all these justifications as to why
Yeah.
we're allowed to continue this behavior.
This is Elena, thank you very much for bringing that up, because I mean, so oftentimes I'm just curious, like, why it's so hard for people to reach out for help when they need it the most.
Right.
And this is answering a lot of that question for me. I mean, it's like when people are traumatized the most, it's the hardest for them to reach out for support with that trauma.
Right. Because we don't have access to the parts of our brain that allow us to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes even though intellectually we may know, hey, it's going to be better for me if I do da 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 da, it's so hard to do that. And, you know, when I've been in those spaces, I can come up with some great rationalizations as to why I can't do that,
Right.
why it's not a good idea,
Right.
why I need to continue on this, you know,
Rampage.
the old habit kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can be a rampage. And when there's a lot of chaos, it's much more obvious. But even as the chaos comes down, it's like, how far does it need to come down before someone is open to a little aha reframing? And
Mhm.
it's, yeah, it's curious.
Yeah. It's true.
I have a question on those holes again, and I'm sorry. Um,
Oh, fine.
are those functioning holes because of the neuroreceptors?
So
I mean, is
let
that
me
what's
show
called
you.
them?
I'm gonna come up with a picture to show you. Because that's a good question. But let me show you a picture.
Isn't it
The
just
answer
where,
essentially is yes, but it's a little more complicated than that.
And I want to say real quick, I appreciate this talk a lot on families, and I appreciate what you do, Jeff. I deal a lot also with family members, and so a lot of this information is useful as far as speaking to them.
Okay. So this is SPEC scan of the ADHD brain. Okay. So this is the normal brain over here to the left. And you see, there's some holes here. The brain is pretty smooth. I mean, it's got its peaks and valleys, but energetically. So think of this as an energetic picture. This is actually a picture of glucose and oxygen utilization across the brain. And so this normal brain, okay, even normal, it's still having a few glitches there. It's not absolutely evenly utilizing glucose and oxygen, but it's doing fairly well. Picture next to it, however, is in trouble. And so those things that look like holes are where the brain has gone dark. So yes, but this could be due to brain injury, where the neurons have actually been destroyed. It could, or damaged. It could be due to very low neurotransmitter function, release, and activity. It could be that there's just not, for whatever reason, enough blood flow to that part of the brain, that the blood flow is obstructed. And so it's not like dying in there. You don't have gangrene in your brain, but it's like it's gone dark. And there can be a number of different biochemical reasons for the brain going dark. Does that kind of answer your question? So if you look at the ADD brain after treatment, so this is on a stimulant drug, Ritalin is increasing blood flow to the entire brain. And so there's more oxygen utilization across the entire brain, and you see better functioning. It's not, all the way better, but it's better. So tyrosine can have this effect. Theanine can have this effect of increasing the functioning of the brain, of the various parts of the brain that need to function.
Yes, I thank you for that explanation. A lot of people show the brain on drugs and say these are holes in drugs, and a lot of, so I'll be able to, I can explain somewhat more. It's more of a functioning thing, and it can be
It can be fixed.
it can be fixed. Yes.
Yeah, people
So,
want to know, can I fix my brain? It's like, yes, you can.
yeah.
Yeah. And here's how you do it. Right? You eat the right food. You take these supplements. You go for a walk around your block every night after dinner. You go to bed at bedtime rather than at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, and if you want, I can pull up some of those spec scans of here's your brain on drugs, if that would be useful. But at least this is the ADD brain.
No, what you just showed, and I screenshotted it. So,
Good.
should be able to explain it. I'm processing to where I can explain it in lay terms, because I find when I use more technical terms, I lose people completely. So,
Oh, exactly. And so I will simplify it when I need to, but I know I could be much more biochemical than I'm being. All right. Anything from you, Kathy?
Christina, hi everyone. I just wanted to share an experience. I'm sorry I got on late and I was driving. I hate that I miss these meetings all the time because one of my favorite AA meetings is from 9 to 10 Central Standard Time. And of course, we all know how important the meeting after the meeting is. So anyways, I made it a point to jump on here because I do love I love all the topics, but the reactive hypoglycemic is just so important in the recovery process, and to understand it and the implications and impact of it. But I just wanted to share my experience this morning. So even before Halloween, someone from our meetings, our Saturday morning meetings, decided it would be nice to have candy bowls on the table at 9 o'clock in the morning. And for myself, having also be doubly blessed with disordered eating, bulimia specifically, when I came into recovery, that behavior came back tenfold from my 20s. And so, to sit with a bowl full of candy in front of me is just really frustrating, especially knowing now what I know and the message that I'm trying to spend. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to do something about this. So I finally did this week. I got a whole bunch of little individual packages of nuts and put those nuts on top of the bowl, the candy in the bowls. And I really wanted to put a sign, feed your brain, not your craving, but I didn't want to, put any shame on there. And it's promotion. What is it?
You could just say, eat nuts, support clear thinking.
Right.
Right, because that's not shaming.
Right. So, but I didn't put anything. I didn't put anything in there. And so another guy who's a chronic relapser comes in to the meeting with 2 big boxes of donuts and sets them out on the counter, and I'm like, oh my god, and because they're very, I definitely do not want to step on any toes.
Right.
And mix non-AA language,
Right.
like my own promotional language, with AA's message. But, when people ask at the end of the meeting, is there anything, AA that needs to be said? And I always want to say, feed your brain with protein. And I just was wondering what your insight is to gently, and when I share in meetings, I do talk about self-care and how I feed my brain, and I eat protein throughout my day, and I share that. But
Here's
I
Kathy,
stronger message.
here's what I would do. I would stand up and say, people, here's something you don't know about me. That when I stopped drinking, my bulimia went out of control and I started craving sugar and, right? Whatever's true for you. And when I walk into a meeting and I see all these donuts and I see all this candy, here's what happens inside of me. And I do a lot better when the snacks provided are the brain food, because then I'm not tempted to lose my sobriety around sugar. You make it about you. You don't make it about them, right? It's not shaming. It's not anything else. You're saying, I have an addiction to sugar. And it popped when I stopped drinking. And I really get that all you guys want to put out all these wonderful foods, but I just want to let you know that when I see it, I have to struggle with my sobriety. Or words to that effect, right? Because, Kathy, there's going to be at least 10 other people in that meeting who have exactly the same experience as you, but don't have the self-awareness or the ability to put it into words.
Okay. Well, and I also make sure, like this morning, I fixed my breakfast of cabbage with butternut squash and codfish before I went to the meeting. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you didn't go in hungry.
Right.
But, AA is about being honest. And so you get to be honest.
I just see so many people that they don't see, and maybe they will start to see, if I'm more open about, and then I don't like to cross the, outside issues, but they do, they are important, because there are lots of people with outside issues. It's not just about the alcohol, because they usually
That's right.
Unknowingly. Yeah.
And I mean, when you're switching addictions from alcohol to another addiction, that actually does have a place in AA.
Right.
It
does.
Yeah, that is something you do get to talk about.
Okay, cool. I value your perspective and your viewpoint. So thank you.
Yeah. And I think I've shared this periodically. When I go to addiction conferences, which I've been doing again now that COVID has settled down, I always put nuts and sometimes, mozzarella cheese sticks or protein bars or whatever on my table. And I am invariably the only table at the entire conference with real food. All the other treatment programs have bowls of candy. And what happens experientially is that people come by my table, get the real food, and thank me. And they say, thanks for, having the nuts here. It really helps me think better. Some of them come by and say, thank you so much. I have sugar addiction. And it's really hard for me walking down these rows past all of these bowls of sugar. And I really, sometimes I can't help myself, just reach out and reach out and reach out. And when I get to your table, I get a break. Thank you.
So Christina,
Uh-huh.
remember that canister of half canister, well, less than half canister of nuts at the conference last week, that with a sledgehammer, we couldn't fit that thing back into any of your bags. And you said, okay, take it with you. So I have found the local meeting house here that where I've moved, and it's just wonderful. And I brought the nuts in a baggie and put them in 2 bags and put them on the table recently for the meeting. And what somebody said nuts. And I it just came out, like, Kathy, it just came out. I was like, blood sugar stability. And I sat down. That's all I said. Yep. And another guy after the meeting, he was like, thanks for bringing those nuts. He wasn't thinking protein stability. He was thinking, yeah, nuts are really good. And I was like, yeah, yeah, those nuts got used, Christina.
Oh, good. That's their purpose. I'm so glad to hear that. And, Mark has told stories of some of his clients who he's gotten eating the protein and away from the junk food. And when they go to their meetings and they're in charge of the snacks, they've started bringing real food. And at first, the other people in the meeting, heckle them, I want my donuts. But then after the meeting, he said that his client reports that these same people come up to them and say, thank you so much. I was actually able to stay awake during the meeting and participate better. I wasn't so foggy. Will you please bring the real food next week? So, yeah.
The proof is in the pudding, as they say, right? The chia pudding. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't think Kathy's talking to us.
Sorry, no, I was dropping my friend off here. I was talking to him.
Okay, nice. So was your friend able to hear what we were talking about?
Yes, he was, and he can benefit from it as well.
What did he tell you what he thought about it?
Yeah, he said, why don't you say, Keith?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
I think you're exactly right, because I was telling her that I never thought about it until she started bringing it up to you. And it did. It bothered me too, thinking I have to sit here in front of all this candy, and the whole time I'm thinking about the candy every time I look at it.
Yeah, right?
And I can't concentrate on the meeting because I'm thinking about the candy.
Yeah.
But you see, nobody's speaking up and saying it because we believe, well, I shouldn't, right? Well, yeah, you should, because you're not the only ones having that same experience.
And you're exactly right. Honesty is the key.
Yeah.
They even say that.
See, and I think that's where some of my codependency comes in, is because I'm too worried about pissing other people off about not being able to have their candy, or whoever brought the candy in, and worrying about other people's responses to what I have to say, which sometimes makes me just be quiet.
Sure. But here your friend is saying, yeah.
There was even a guy sitting beside me that ate the nuts, and he was like, I'm glad these finally came. He said, I needed this instead of the candy. And the guy beside him was eating it too.
Yeah.
And
There
that
you
Wish
go,
the
point,
nuts were
Kathy.
as cheap as the candy.
Affirmation.
that point that Kathy brought up about, I feel like that's my codependency. I'm afraid to say anything. Exact same thing that family members feel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And it was funny. Some people I don't have a problem with. Like this morning, I was talking to my mother on the way to the meeting, and I had my cup of fish and vegetables. And she's, she says, "Oh, what is that? Your squash soup?" And I said, "Yeah, it's squash and cabbage and cod." And she was like, "Oh, like, how can you eat?" I'm like, "Goodbye, mother." Click. I don't have to sit there and listen to people, make me feel bad about what she chose to eat for breakfast as she's
Well-
puffing on her cigarette.
I love this. I love it. Okay. So you think one of our slogans could be, "Let's go nuts,"
There you go.
right? In a whole,
Right.
in a whole different way.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yep, let's go nuts. But you could put a little sign, next to your nuts saying for clear thinking.
Yeah.
There's
I
nothing,
love
there's
that. I
nothing
love
shaming,
this. This
right?
is great.
It's
I have
just
such
you're
an
offering
issue with
something
this.
positive.
Yeah. I have that same issue, Kathy, in meetings for years. It's like, it almost feels dangerous
Yes.
to do it. No, I told like Christina, like some other people know, years ago when I was getting my nutrition educator certificate in 2006, 2007, and someone asked me at a meeting after the meeting, "Oh, what are you in school for?" And I said, like, holistic nutrition educator, and the entire group, without even realizing it, literally took about 5 steps back away from me. Away from.
Yeah.
Oh. And I was like, shit. So yes,
I know it's so
But
taboo.
that
for so many
honesty
people.
connection, Christina, is really good. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That really changes my brain. Like, yeah, thanks,
Yep.
everybody. This is great.
So, especially you, sir. I was going to just post this whole video up on YouTube, but I'm very conscious about confidentiality and stuff. So, are you okay with me putting the whole thing up with this discussion and everything?
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Wonderful.
And let me
Thank
tell
you.
you guys, that is so cool what you guys are saying, because especially about the signs, my brain, and I don't know if it's because I'm a male or what, but my brain is thinking when I walk in and I see candy, oh, quick fix, all right. Or I see health food and I'm thinking, that's just healthy food. I can do that later or whatever. But what you said, clearer thinking, never crossed my mind until you said it.
Right.
So sometimes signs are good like
Yeah.
that. It changes the way you look at things. Does that make sense?
Well, total
So-
sense. Yeah.
I really like that. I think the signs would be a big help.
There you go. There you go. And they're non-shaming.
Right. It's
Right.
not, and that's a way of putting that up, of putting that out there without hurting feelings.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a
Exactly.
just different way of seeing the glass half full
Yeah.
or half empty.
I'll make a little sign to put on the edge of the bowl, and that's for clearer thinking.
There you go.
Or for clear thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Better brain, better thinking, anything. You're right. Cool. Yeah, but I don't mind.
Okay. Thank you. Because I think this is such a powerful conversation we just had.
Yes.
And I want to share it with the world. Other people need
Feel
to hear
free.
it.
Make me taller, skinnier, younger, and better looking.
I'll
Hey,
be right on.
I'm
I'll be
sitting
right on that.
You're-